Okay, we will start our meeting. Welcome everyone to our journey to Guernsey. This is actually our 6th presentation so far, and we hope you will continue to join us as we intend to continue having a presentation on a different country every month. If you have participated in ITHF and have gone to a really wonderful place and had a terrific experience and would like to share with us your experience, please let us know. And you can go at the ithf.org and find one of us and let us know about it, or you can send us a little note with your information in the chat, and we will talk to you about perhaps doing the presentation in 2022. At this time, this is the process that will follow. We will do the presenter. If you have any questions while the presentation is going on, please write them in the chat on an uppercase, and that way they will be monitored, and one of our team members, Valsa, will address those questions a little later on in the session. Normally, we try to break into little groups of 5 or 6 after the question and answer period. But unfortunately, today we're having a few technical difficulties, and Madhu has lost her ability to do so today. So we probably will return to the main room and try to maintain a discussion if we are able to and get to know each other a little bit. So with that, I would like to, and then there will be a little closing and let you know about our upcoming programs. With that, I would like to pass the words to Heather, who is also a member of our committee, and it will be introducing our speaker, Janine and Paul. Heather, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. This is my 3rd time seeing this presentation. So the first 2 times are amazing, and I have a bio here, but I just want to say how wonderful Janine and Paul play off of each other, and how wonderful that they love this place which they've lived. So, but having said that, here's their official bios, because they're pretty important people. So Janine and Paul are Rotarians of the Rotary Club of Guernsey. They are in the Legacy Society members and major donors. They have both received regional service awards for a polio-free world. Janine is also the recipient of an International Polio Service Award, as well as Meritus Service Award for Rotary Foundation. They run the End Polio Now Shop Guernsey on behalf of their club, making EPN branded merchandise available to all Rotarians around the world. Janine is currently serving Rotary Great Britain and Ireland as the Peace Building and Conflict Prevention Specialist. She is also a Rotary Empowering Girls Ambassador, leading the global initiative from Rotary International President Shekha Mehta, sorry about that, and in Great Britain and Ireland. She speaks to many clubs and districts on any or all of the peace-related polio and empowering girls matters, and makes them relevant to each audience to inspire them and to take positive action. She loves public speaking. Janine's professional career has been law enforcement, banking regulation, corporate governance, and financial services. Paul's background has been in hospitality industry, having established and run the first nightclubs and one of the largest hotels on the island. Both are now retired, and Paul is a tremendous supporter of Janine's almost full-time commitment to her volunteer work as an extremely active Rotarian in club, district, and across Great Britain and Ireland service projects. And I will turn the time over to them. I'm very excited to see the presentation again.
You sure you don't want to give the presentation, Heather?
I actually do want to come visit you. So I'm going to be in Paris in Italy at the end of August. And I was looking the last time you were presenting this morning in my time zone at how the flights were. So we'll see. I might be knocking on your door.
Can I just say that because I'm co-host, I can see that there's somebody that's been sat waiting to be admitted for ages. Denzil Feinberg. Should I press the admit button if somebody's having a problem doing that?
Yes, please. I didn't see.
Thank
Okay,
you.
no worries. Okay, so
Thank you.
hopefully you're seeing our screen now.
Mhm.
So Heather, when you think of coming, call us and we'll talk through the best options for you to get here.
June and I actually did this about 15, 20 years ago when I first joined the Travel and Hosting Fellowship. And I think it was Guernsey or Jersey that I phoned, and we picked up at the airport and driven around for an hour. So I must look up the names and the times again.
Yeah.
So June's from London, England, so she has fondness of Guernsey, Jersey area. So we're looking forward to this. I'll let you take over again.
Okay, thank you. So welcome to our beautiful island home. We are in the Rotary Club of Guernsey, as has been mentioned. We have 70 odd members, and there's another club on the island called Rotary Guernsey, which is the original name of Guernsey. Our club will be celebrating our 100th year celebrations in March 23. So we're quite an old club. The slides that we're going to be showing today, sorry. The view that you're seeing there is a view from our home, looking west out to sea. The sun has just set and we've been here 10.5 years. We still can't stop taking the photographs of our sunsets. They're always different. Our weather, we've been asked many times now.
Paul,
Yeah,
we are not seeing anything. We're just seeing Guernsey, our tiny island of paradise. It's not moving.
that's our photograph of our shot from our island, from our
Okay.
house.
Okay.
That's why you're not seeing anything. That's what we're talking about. The winters are mild and summers are sunny, low 70s, 20 odd degrees centigrade. Our language is English. Janine will say a little bit more about that in a while. This is the map of the world, showing, focusing now on where we live, which is in the southern part of the English Channel. It's near France, Normandy, France, and we're about 30 miles from Normandy and 70 miles from England. We have a population of around 65,000, and the majority of them are still true locals.
And Paul definitely isn't. He hates the fact that I won't let him call himself local, and that's because he's lived here longer than me and moved here when he was 9 years old from Yorkshire, but he is absolutely not local. Many of you may know of Guernsey. In fact, I think somebody has already mentioned it now, and somebody at the session this morning as well. There was a book written, a fictional book about the Second World War and afterwards, called The Guernsey Literacy and Potato Peel Pie Society. And that book has been turned into a movie. So that's why some of you will know the name of Guernsey. So whilst our main island is called Guernsey, which is this big one here, triangular, 25 square miles, we have got other islands which together make up the bailiwick of Guernsey. Alderney is the next biggest, and there is a Rotary Club up there, a wonderful club up there. The bailiwick itself, the history of that goes back to 933 AD, because we used to be under the control of the first Duke of Normandy. And in fact, to this day, the bailiwick and also the bailiwick of Jersey, Jersey is our sister island, but totally independent from us and from everybody else, just like we are. We are the last remnants of the medieval Duchy of Normandy. And in fact, our Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of England, isn't our Queen. She is actually our Duke of Normandy. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that now, because we were part of Normandy when King John lost Normandy back in 1204. And we were therefore isolated from mainland Europe. Over the years, because of where we are located, we're actually quite an important part of the trade, the sea trade that happened over many, many centuries. And we're regarded as it being really important that we remained neutral. So we got lots of favors from various kings and queens over the years. And that's why we are now governed by the Duke of Normandy, who happens to be Queen Elizabeth II. And in fact, over the centuries, more and more treaties were put into place to give us even more independence. We have never been part of England. We are not part of the United Kingdom, and we are not part of the European Union, and are fiercely independent. So we have our own flag. As far as the United Kingdom is concerned, we are a territory for which they are responsible. However, we have our own government, our own police force, our own tax system, healthcare, post office, health infrastructure, you name it, it's ours. We are not part of the Commonwealth of Nations, although we do have relationships with the Commonwealth and with other international organisations. We are members of the British Irish Council. When it's the Commonwealth Games, we have our own team, Team Guernsey. And in fact, today, somebody earlier on asked us about the Olympics. We don't have Team Guernsey in the Olympics, but we do have several members of Guernsey residents who are taking part as part of Team GB. And today, one of those was running in one of the relay teams, and they've qualified fourth for the next round. So that's terrific news. So the difference with a crown dependency from a British overseas territory is that our link with the mainland is actually through the monarch, not through Parliament at all. So as we are not sovereign states, we have our power to issue our own legislation, but it does rest with the Queen in Council for some of the major legislation. Having said that, if there was ever any law that somebody wanted to not consent to through the Queen in Council process, there would be quite a strong dispute that they don't have the power to do that. The Queen's official representative on our islands is the Lieutenant Governor. The current governor is a member of our club, Rotary Club of Guernsey, is an honorary member, and his wife of the other club. They're both absolutely fantastic supporters of Rotary and have been brilliant in my work in relation to polio and peace. The political head and representative of the government is the president of the Policy and Resources Committee, because our government system is a committee-based system. We don't have political parties, thank goodness, although they're trying to introduce them. So up until the early 19th century, we were still predominantly using the French currency, although we had introduced a Guernsey livre. The French livre itself was legal tender until 1834, and French francs until 1921, although we had introduced and accepted English currency alongside Guernsey currency, but it wasn't on a one-to-one basis. We had our own Guernsey shillings and francs. In fact, after the First World War, when the value of the franc fell, the French franc fell relative to sterling, that was when, as a jurisdiction, we decided to adopt a Guernsey pound and that we would make it equal to an English pound. So that was in 1921. Until 1948, French was the official language of Guernsey. And it was actually a dialect, a Norman dialect, and our very small island is divided into 10 parishes. And as a young child, I could remember that everybody from each parish had a different Norman dialect, and they also had a different accent, although they were generally speaking English as well. But the reason that it is still part of our culture is because many of our houses, much of our property is very old, and the property deeds are all still in Norman French. Many of the old laws that haven't yet been updated are also in Norman French. There are no official English translations at all. So if you want to be an advocate before our court, not only do you have to become a solicitor or a barrister, you also have to do a Guernsey bar exam, and you have to travel to Caen in France to do the French bar exam before you can actually stand before the courts. So it is sadly a dying out language as far as being used common day. And I think it's going to be gone very soon, if not in my lifetime. As an island, we've had some amazing people either born here or come here. And one of them is Victor Hugo, the acclaimed French author and poet. Les Miserables is obviously one of his works. He spent 15 years in Guernsey when he was in exile from France, so a refugee between 1855 and 1870. And if you ever look at his works, Les Travailleurs de la Mer, he actually declares Guernsey to be the rock of hospitality and freedom. And absolutely it is. And many people consider that his time in Guernsey was his most productive period. And he actually has still got a house in Guernsey. It's Victor Hugo's house. It's known as Hauteville House. It currently belongs to the city of Paris. It is an extraordinary house because he spent his 15 years creating the inside and the garden in his taste, which is truly unique. The city of Paris have spent several years doing a complete renovation of it, but absolutely maintaining it exactly how he left it. Recommend that it's one of the things that you do when you're over here, but you do have to book in advance and it is difficult to get in. Another famous person is Renoir, the famous impressionist. He only spent a month in Guernsey and yet he produced 15 works, all based on one beautiful bay in the cliffs called Moulin-Wet. And another person that some of you on this call may have heard of is Major General Sir Isaac Brock, who I think his unofficial title was Hero of Upper Canada, very involved with the history of Canada.
Andy Prio is a very famous person in the motor racing world. When they formed the World Touring Car Championship, Andy entered, and the first 3 years he won the title each year. Andy actually just lifts up our little lane here. Matt Letitia, he was captain of Southampton football and played for England, and his nickname is Le God. I actually went to school with his parents. Oliver Reed, he lived here for 20 plus years and famously got drunk many, many times and took on all locals in arm wrestling. And he actually took me on one day. After about 20 minutes competing, neither of us won, so it was declared null and void. And him and his wife, Josephine, actually came to stay at the Savoy Hotel, which I ran for a short period, and didn't cause any trouble, luckily.
I don't think you'd have let him.
Or maybe he knew that he would be up against it. Many, many more people have lived in Guernsey, famous, but far too many to go through. Guernsey history that we know, it goes back 6,000 years BC, so quite well documented. We were part of Normandy, France, physically, but the rising sea levels created the English Channel, and then the bailiwicks of Guernsey and Jersey were formed. Some magical places to visit, the Dolmens and Menhirs are just two of them. One dolmen in particular near the golf course at Lancresse in Guernsey was where I chose to propose to Janine way back in August 1990, and she said yes. I think it was the magic of the place rather than my charm.
Must be, I'm still here.
The first home that we had together was built in the 1200s, and it's believed that the basement was very big stones, was constructed from a nearby dolmen that they pulled apart.
Guernsey and Jersey, but I really want to focus on Guernsey, has been very much part of the history of Western Europe. And in fact, when the Romans occupied Western Europe, many people that fled ended up in the Channel Islands. Later, there was a lot of trade and also Roman settlements on the island. And one day of the year, every year, divers are allowed to dive in the harbour, the main St. Peter Port harbour. And about 35, 40 years ago, one of our divers that we know well actually discovered what is known to be the largest Roman object and one of only two surviving, a shipwreck. We've called it the Asterisk. It was brought up, huge timbers brought up from it, and it was believed to have sunk around AD 280 because it caught fire. But that's a fantastic example of the trade that has happened over many, many centuries. And in fact, there's been a lot of piracy problems over the years. And at one point, the problems with the French and piracy meant that we had English naval ships protecting us during the 16th century. And that's another reason why we ended up with all the privileges, because it was really important to trade for both France and England that we remained neutral. And in the trade, actually, the taxes from it was how we've ended up with such amazing buildings around the island, the garrisons such as Castle Cornet, and many of the other things that you can still see today. Guernsey has had a really long maritime history. Many small Guernsey ships have been involved themselves in the smuggling trade. And in fact, when it became more profitable to be legal privateering, then that took over. But also many of the small ships from Guernsey went with local residents and moved to North America by the beginning of the 18th century. And in fact, for instance, there's Guernsey County, which was founded in Ohio in 1810 and is still very much there. Fishing is a key industry, or was a key industry for the island. Sadly, these days, many big boats come in from other parts of the UK, France, and further afield, but it's still very much part of our life. And the fresh food, fresh fish that you would get in the restaurants over here is fantastic. And my own family were very much part of the fishing family. Another thing that Guernsey is famous for is its Guernsey granite, which is a beautiful, very solid rock. It's generally blue, although there is some pink granite. London Bridge and many important London roads were actually paved in Guernsey granite. The quarrying industry in the 19th century was very active over here, with over 250 quarries. And we actually had to bring in quarrymen from Cornwall in the southwest of England. The blue granite is particularly good for being dressed, I think the word is. And it's believed that the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral are either from Guernsey or Herm granite. Another important part of our history and today is horticulture and agriculture. For over 200 years, glass houses, that we refer to as greenhouses, were used for growing grapes. And tomatoes became a very important industry for the island from the 1860s. And it was only in the last 30 or 40 years that really has declined because of increased competition from Dutch producers and changes in the British railway system, which was used for transporting them. But horticulture is still important. We have a chap called Raymond Everson, that if you're into floral things of any sort, you will know that he is an absolutely fantastic world expert in growing and producing clematis. And we're in fact the largest clematis producer in the world. And he always wins gold medals at garden shows in the UK with the Royal Horticultural Society. And 2/3 of the freesias, which are a beautiful flower as well, that are sold in the UK are grown in Guernsey. Tourism has been an important part of the industry, and generally that's either popular as a refuge or a retirement location, which is how Victor Hugo was brought here. And I think to this day, in some ways, that's still the case. And light industry, you know, many firms over the last couple of centuries have ended up in Guernsey. And at the time, it was to avoid the high taxes on sugar for one particular firm that was from Dundee in Scotland. And they produced marmalade here in Guernsey. And they were the main global exporter of marmalade in the late 1800s, would you believe? To this day, Specsavers, some of you may have heard of. It's the largest privately owned optical firm in the world. The head office is here. The owners of the company actually live here. And I was the legal head of the company globally for several years. A fantastic business for Guernsey.
So this is our Guernsey cow. Hopefully all of you know and have heard about the Guernsey cow. The milk is very rich, high in fat and protein, and it's got a yellowish tinge. The breed is all over the world, and we've got a very successful operation in Africa. The Send a Cow, which is a really great charity to be involved in, uses just the Guernsey cow. We also, another animal in Guernsey is the golden Guernsey goat, which is a long-haired, beautiful goat. It's a rare breed, classified as rare, beautiful golden and a very placid nature. The breed nearly got wiped out in the Second World War with the German occupation because most animals were slaughtered for food during that time. There was one brave lady decided to save the goat and hid them away for the whole of the occupation, and that's how we still have our golden Guernsey goats today.
Very brave lady. This isn't a very bright photo, but you may be able to see here this lady who is wearing a sweater, which is a traditional Guernsey sweater. What they're doing is having a great meal, social occasion, and a few drinks, which is what you do a lot of the time in Guernsey. But going back to the Guernsey sweaters, I mean, they were originally knitted back in the 1600s, and it's still the same traditional wool and the same traditional patterns to this day. The wool is a particularly durable and super weather resistant, so fantastic for fishermen and farmers to stave off the really cold winds and rain. It's traditionally navy blue, but that wool and the Guernsey style of knitting has been famous for many, many years, with Queen Elizabeth I used to wear Guernsey stockings because they were the most comfortable and the warmest. And we're told that Mary, Queen of Scots, actually was wearing Guernsey stockings when she was beheaded. I'm not sure if that's something to be proud of or not.
Not really, a bit gruesome. We'd like to thank Visit Guernsey for providing quite a few of the slides that we've used today. The website is shown here. And if you go onto YouTube, you can look up lots of beautiful short videos made by locals and visitors to Guernsey. Some stormy weather, which is really quite an interesting aspect to look at. Tourism, when I was in the industry way back, was 25% of the gross national product. Today, it's dropped right down to 5%. Guernsey is never overrun with tourists. About 7,000 roughly come normally in pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID. We allow people in now, but they have to go through testing on the way in. Beaches are never overcrowded. Flights from the UK and ferries. The ferries come from Portsmouth and from Poole, which are left and right of Southampton, for those that may know Southampton. Many of the local national airlines, airports, Gatwick Airport, which is south of London, Southampton, which is our closest one, Bristol, Exeter, Manchester, Edinburgh, and London City, and some from France, and occasionally from other European countries as well.
For more than 50 years, Guernsey has been one of the world's best regarded and most successful specialist finance centres. And it's not because we're a tax haven, we absolutely aren't. You know, there's a very strict regime, the regulation standards are high. As a previous banking regulator, I can assure you that we do everything we can to keep the bad apples out of the island. But the expertise that we've got here, the fantastic communication links and the stability of the government mean that it makes us a particularly important centre globally, and it's a very important industry for Guernsey as a whole. The pace of life here is pretty darn good. Yes, we have got all of the necessary facilities to be able to do business. But, you know, there's no commuting time, the low crime rates. It's a fantastic place to bring up children. We control our own borders. It just is a wonderful place to live.
And visit.
And visit. Here, this is actually Castle Corner, which is at the end of the main harbour, St. Peter Port, and you'll see a cruise ship there in the background. That's actually how many Rotarians come and visit us for a very short time on a cruise. So perhaps that's one of the options for you. But there's lots to do here. There's some fantastic walks, whether it's coastal or scenic in the small island roads. We call many of our roads lanes. You would probably call them footpaths, so you do need to be careful if you're driving. Water sports of every kind. The sea temperatures generally between 8 and 19 degrees centigrade, which is between 45 and the low 60s Fahrenheit. So if you're a wuss, then you'll need to wear a wetsuit. We went for a wonderful swim last week, and although it was a little cold to get in, once we were in, it was absolutely glorious. And this is just one of our beautiful bays heading into sunset with the paddle boarders.
Restaurants on the island are very, very numerous. In October and November, we have something called Tennerfest, which is a very inexpensive set meal, ranging from generally £12.50 to £17.50. Weekends, the restaurants get booked up. So if you come over and want to go out for one of these Tennerfest meals, make sure you book up in advance for the meals. Any time of year, the restaurants are serving up very good priced meals. Some are expensive, but there's a lot of budget ones as well.
There's lots of other things to do. I mean, we do have a number of museums and gardens. This is Candy Museum, which is our main museum. This is actually the garden there. It's Victorian gardens. Really, really lovely. There's also a statue of Victor Hugo there. We've got golf courses. We've got that slow pace of life. You can do as little or as much as you want. There's quite a few pubs, and there's a few of those nightclubs for those that like them, but I never have. It was not nice when we were first together and he was still running the nightclubs, but that's another story. The German occupation, that was a really fascinating part of our history. During that time, my mum was evacuated and she ended up in the northern part of England, but my dad lived here throughout the occupation, which was from June 1940 all the way through to May 1945. Alderney itself became a concentration camp. So there are many parts, many things like this. This is the entrance to a huge tunnel network that the Germans built near the harbour, and it was to be a submarine base, which never actually became a submarine base. The Castle Corner itself is a fantastic place to spend a day, take a picnic lunch, just chill out and relax, look at all the different things that they've got there. We've got towers, which are called loophole towers all around the island that were built in the 1700s and then were reinforced for the Napoleonic Wars. There's just so much to see. This is our Maritime Museum, which is small but fantastically interesting. And we can actually see that. I'm looking out my window now and I can see it from here. That's near there, literally across this slipway, we call it, is another cafe that holiday makers like going. And in fact, that's where you can see the timbers from the Asterisk, that wreck from 280 AD. Cycling is a terrific way to get around the island, but I would recommend that unless you're super fit and you like going up and down hills a lot, that you actually use a pedal assist bicycle. The bus service is excellent and very low cost. And of course, you can hire a car. Our capital is just a stunning, quaint, cobbled streets place. There's no traffic in the main streets themselves, as you can see here. The floral displays all through the year are stunning. And in fact, a Rotarian friend of ours is responsible for conceiving the fact that we should have a floral display throughout the town. He worked with something called Floral Guernsey, which he chaired for some time. They've created a watering system. It really is a stunning town to come to. This particular street here is our high street, and this building at the back there's a very famous photo of the Germans marching down this street. And I mentioned my dad was here during the occupation as a wicked teenager who did all sorts of things, like putting the very rare sugar that you could find in the petrol tanks of the German vehicles. And this particular picture of these Germans marching down this street, he was actually standing in the front of them, pulling faces at them. He really was quite wicked. And we've got the spectacular backdrop of we've mentioned before, the Castle Cornet.
This is one view of our harbour. We've got 3 marinas there. One is for visiting yachts and the other 2 are for locals. You need to have a chart if you decide to sail here, because the waters are quite dangerous, many rocky areas to get through. And we have big tides between us and Herm, and very strong currents too. Our tide range maximum is 30 feet, so it's quite big. That's because we're in the English Channel.
Very briefly about the other islands that form part of the bailiwick. Alderney is just 10 miles from France. It's 20 miles away from us. It's only 3.5 miles by 1.5 miles. This is actually the only place that we've got railway, the Alderney Railway. We've no longer got the steam engine, it's now a diesel engine. But you may, those of you that are keen train spotters, and I used to drive the train in Alderney, these are some London Underground carriages, and my partner at the time and I arranged with the British Army to bring them over to Alderney on a landing craft as one of their exercises in transportation. So it really is a magical place, beautiful sweeping bays. It's got a charming little town centre. The population is about 2,000. And as I said, you'd be really welcomed at the Rotary Club of Alderney.
This is Sark. There's 2 parts to Sark. There's a main Sark and then a causeway high up that goes across to Little Sark. There's no cars. There's just dusty roads, maintained, but they're dusty. You can walk, cycle, hire a cycle, or there's horse and carts. The farmers have tractors, and the population is about 500 in the throughout the year.
It's well worth a visit. You can do a day trip to Sark from Guernsey.
It's only 9 miles.
They've got some fantastic restaurants there as well.
Yeah.
The funny thing about the tractors is you may well see the farmers going to church on a Sunday with them.
And the pubs.
No comment. And this is Herm. It really is a little gem. It's only 10 minutes away from Guernsey on a boat. It's got 65 residents and permanent residents, and they have about 100 seasonal staff. If you go there, make sure you wear sunscreen, whether it's sunny or not, because you will get sunburnt. And it's got its own primary school, and then they move to Guernsey to do their senior school, but they travel on either a daily basis on the boat, or they board for during the week and then go back to Herm in the evenings. But it really is a fantastic little place.
And there is a hotel there as well.
There is, and self-catering cottages. It's a lovely place to stay.
And campsites.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And then this is Liu, which is not populated. There is a house there, and I'm looking out the window and I can see that very view from here. It is now a charitable trust, and the whole area is actually recognised by UNESCO as a Ramsar site. So it's a nature reserve and wetland area. But the history of Liu itself is really interesting. It goes back to the Mesolithic and Neolithic ages. And there's a causeway. You have to walk to Liu. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how quick you are, but you need to be sure-footed, because there is a slipway, a causeway of granite, part of the way across, but then it's actually clambering over the rocks and the pebbles. And you also have to watch the time, because you can only go there 2 weeks out of every month. And the time you can spend there before the causeway gets covered is anything from half an hour to about 2 hours. And you definitely don't want to risk it, even if it's only up to your ankles when you start to come back, because you will get washed away. The tides are so strong there. So very quickly, Rotary and Guernsey, the two clubs, we work together on polio initiatives. The island is awash with all sorts of awareness of Purple for Polio, which we use here, with over 500,000 purple crocus that bloom every spring. One of the key things that we do in our own club is something called the Tree of Joy. And that's this lit up ship's mast here in December. And through the Tree of Joy, we also raise money through a flag day and use that money to give fuel vouchers and food to those people that are struggling over the Christmas period. And we also provide gift tags for named children who wouldn't otherwise get a gift at Christmas. So it might be that it's for Sarah, who's 11 and she wants this particular toy. Guernsey people will take that tag, they'll buy the present, wrap it up, give it back to us with the tag, and we'll arrange for it to get to the children. Shoe boxes is a scheme that the other club have done very, very successfully. And it's literally filling a shoebox with specific items, again, for children outside of Guernsey who have got little or nothing. And that usually goes to one of the more impoverished areas in Europe or in Africa. And one way of coming to see the island is that in early June each year, both clubs work together on something we call our Island Walk. It's currently sponsored by Safri Champness over here, so it's known as the Safri Rotary Walk at the moment. And it's 39 miles around Guernsey in a day, takes between 8 and 12 hours. Your feet will hurt at the end of it because the first half of it is an awful lot of up and down and steps, but it's a fantastic fundraiser. We raise between 40 and 50,000 pounds every single year. So it really is fantastic.
Around 800 people participate.
Yeah. And then polio, we do so much for that.
So we sell lots of polio products, including our polio bear, which hopefully you can see there. Many thousands have been sold over the time. We started in 2009, just doing it for our district, because Janine back then was the polio officer for the district. The national president of Rotary in Britain and Ireland saw our stand, was quite amazed by the products we were doing and how well they stood out, asked us if we would start doing it nationally. So reluctantly for me, but not for Janine, we agreed that we would do it nationally, which was 28 districts in those days. We're down to 25 now. And the first national conference we went to, the number 2 for PR in Rotary worldwide saw our stand, said, "This is fantastic. You've got to do it for the whole world." And I said no. Janine said yes, and as normal, she gets her way. So we do it the whole world. We're licensed vendors, and if you want to order anything specific, rather than ordering it through the website, you can get in touch with us by email or phone. The prices for post and packing are sort of set on the website, but we can probably get them cheaper if we do it direct with ourselves. And all the profits we make go to Emporio Now.
That's it, guys. So I hope you've enjoyed that. It's a whistle-stop tour. We're very happy to take questions. I know there are some already in the chat box, but we're here to help if you would like.
Thank you, Janine and Paul. That was an amazing presentation. You know, we lived in London for 3.5 years, but somehow missed this paradise. So never too late, hoping to visit sometimes. Okay, I can see a couple of questions in the chat box. I'll just read out. This one is from Alonso. What's the best way to reach Guernsey?
It really depends on whether you like sailing or flying. If you're in London, the easiest way will be to just pop over either slightly east of London to London City, and catch the plane, which takes about an hour, or go down to Gatwick, which is a half-hour train journey down to Gatwick, and that flight, then it's a jet, is about 40 minutes. If you want to come by boat, the fast ferry is a 2.5-hour journey from Poole, and you can get there by train from London or pretty well anywhere in the UK.
Okay, thank you. And this one is from Lihia. Which is the best time of the year to visit?
Any time, as long as you actually have appropriate clothing. I don't think there's anything nicer than sitting on the cliffs in a really stormy day, and that's how I studied for all my exams. I lived at the other end of the island, and I'd cycle down with all my school books, and I'd go and sit on the cliff, wrapped up, holding stuff down, pinning stuff down so it didn't get blown away, and I passed my exams. So it really is, whatever the weather. But I would say, I think the nicest time of year is May, June, or September. May, June, you've got a lot of the wildflowers. Generally, the weather in both of those times is reasonable. We're not a tropical paradise. There's no guarantee on the weather, but you know, as I say, as long as you bring that raincoat or that warm coat or whatever, whenever you come, any time is wonderful.
If you like dining out, of course, October, November for the Tennerfest is the best time.
Absolutely.
Thank you. The next one is from Betty. How would you reach Guernsey from Normandy?
Generally, the best route for that is to come by ferry, and there is a ferry that comes from St Malo to Guernsey.
It's a fast ferry.
It's not as a good a service. You couldn't do a day trip, sadly, these days. It's easier to do a day trip to Jersey, and Jersey is very different. And I'm not going to slate Jersey, but Guernsey is the little gem.
We wouldn't live
Jersey
there.
is much faster. The harbour's not as attractive. It's a much busier pace of life. But St Malo by ferry. What we do sometimes, because we've got timeshare down in Portugal, we actually will take our car to the UK, and then we'll end up doing the Channel Tunnel and going from there.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in the chat box, but if anyone has any questions, please go ahead.
Trudy's put in the chat box about the jumper in England, the Guernsey sweater. Yes, that Guernsey sweater is sold worldwide to this day. You know, you will literally see it all over the world. I mean, when we went over to South Korea for the convention, we saw people wearing the Guernsey. It's really popular in Japan. You know, it's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, one more new message.
I'm just waiting.
And there's another question about Brexit. Yes.
Right.
We weren't part of the UK. We weren't part of Europe. So Brexit didn't actually directly affect us.
We just ducked.
Having said that, the relationship between Guernsey and Europe throughout the time that Britain was part of the European Union was governed by something called Protocol 3. And that just set out how the relationship would operate. So to an extent, you know, that there is that connection, but absolutely there isn't. So, you know, we are who we are. We're Guernsey, we're independent. And so life goes on.
Thank you.
We have very low unemployment, about 100 people unemployed at the moment. And COVID also, because we've got border control of harbours and airport, is very low. We just looked at the figures before we came on tonight, and there's only 38 cases in Guernsey, and they're all in lockdown themselves. So, you know, the community's kept safe, unlike other places in the world.
Janine and Paul, I sent an email to you regarding some fairly specific travel questions. Should I resend those, or did you happen to get those?
I did. I have to say, I have totally forgotten to reply to you, which I apologise enormously, John. But yes, if you could just send it again, then it'll get back into the top of my inbox. I have about 200 emails a day. So
Sure.
I try to keep up, but I do sometimes slip, and I do apologize.
That's fine. Well, we're looking forward to visiting, and just have some travel restrictions and need some help with that.
Fine.
Is your phone number on the email?
Yes, it would be.
Yeah, because we can call you and talk through as well.
Okay, super. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Again, Janine and Paul, thank you so much for the fantastic presentation. If there is any additional questions, please feel free to put them on the chat, address Janine and Paul directly. At this point, normally we would have a little break room where only 4 or 5 of us would get together, but unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties with the Madhu as the host. She had to connect via telephone and could not do it via the computer. So at this time, please unmute yourself and feel free to express anything you want to say, address any member that is in the group. We have a very small, cozy group anyway. So please feel free to interact. And again, we want to thank you, and we want to let you know before we do that, that we have a program coming on Friday, August 27th. Our fellow Rotarian Nadia Navarrete will do the presentation, and it is about the region in Paraná, Argentina. So please write down August 27th. You can always go to ITHF.org, try our new portal and webpage, figure out, check into the events, and you should see that event posted in a very near future. We usually try to post them after we have the 2 presentations, and we also post in Facebook. Now, for those of you who are here, a lot of people have difficulty with figuring out the time for the respective areas. What would you prefer that we post as a standard time so everybody can figure out the time every time from that? Any comments? Raise your hand or put it in the chat, please. Thank you. And I see John Henderson has a question.
Well, I wonder how many days we in the Guernsey for a short time after visiting, France or England. How many days would we need to spend in Guernsey just to know we had a good flavor?
Sorry, you're very quiet. I can't hear very well what you're saying.
John, you're so far away from the microphone. Please.
Having trouble
Come
here, John.
close.
You want to talk here? John is going to use my computer to talk. Apparently,
Okay.
we have 2 devices in the same area,
They had the sound turned on.
and
I'll try it.
okay, he's gonna try the sound now.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wondered how many days we would need to spend in Guernsey to know we had a good feel for the island. If we came, after visiting France or England.
I think minimum 7.
knowing what you Americans are like, probably 24 hours. No, seriously, if you want to enjoy the pace of life, I mean, we always say that wherever you go, you should do 3 nights, because otherwise, if you do less than that, your first day is arriving, you've got 1 day, and then the next day is packing and going. So
We have a fast car, but unfortunately the speed limit on Guernsey is 35 miles an hour.
So are there a lot of electric assist bikes available?
yeah, it's fine.
You won't see everything in 3 days. 7 is the minimum in my book.
Friendship exchange.
No.
It'd be a good one to do.
Our district do, but not Guernsey.
One of the questions that was asked is the length of stay with Rotarians and members. I don't think that as members we're obligated to host in our homes, but we become a knowledge base and tour guides and maybe recommendations for where to stay if you don't have the space. So don't let that stop you.
And travel suggestions as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's wonderful.
And of course, the other islands, you know, how to get there, how to book it, how long
Right.
should you be, how long you should be there.
Right.
And everyone's a personal choice, you know, so you have to find out exactly what people are wanting to be able to tailor it to their requirements. And being an ex-hotelier, I was also on the Hotel Association committee. So I'm reasonably knowledgeable and very, very interested to help people.
I have a question for Patty Fowler. Where in Oregon are you, Patty?
Had to unmute. It's Frailer, Patty Frailer. I'm in Portland. You probably all have heard about Portland. So that's
Oh,
where
yes.
I am. Yep.
Okay.
That's where I am. It's a beautiful day here. In fact, of the 3-day weekend, this is supposed to be the hottest, maybe 102. They predict it could go up to, but yeah, we're having a wonderful, beautiful, sunny summer.
We may be coming by through Portland and would love your email address if you wouldn't mind. Could you put that in the chat?
I sure would. Yeah, please contact me. And I should be home because I'm doing a lot of deck work projects and things. So yeah, I'd love to visit with you, show you whatever you need to be shown. You can even stay over here.
That'll be toward the end of August. So we may, if you'll put your email and telephone number in the chat.
And we promise we won't get you down into the downtown core. We'll keep you safe.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
For anybody thinking of coming to Guernsey, we have to say that both of us are being very, very cautious with COVID. So we wouldn't be wanting to host anybody in 2021.
Only because of that.
Happy to advise you or to talk to you or whatever, but we're being extremely cautious, and who knows what 2022 will bring. But that's why we're not going to go to Houston to the convention, which we're disappointed about, but that's our personal choice.
To everyone, I actually encourage you to go to ITHF.org and look up all the different members and look up for their addresses, their emails. They are all there. And it is important that you do go to the website and check it out, because unless we hear from you that you are not able to get what you want out of the website, we will not be able to tell our leaders how to fix it. So I do encourage you to utilize ITHF.org to look up all the different members, to seek connections, to